everybody, Tanya here, and I'm ready to reveal another one of my treasures. But first, I want to thank Michaela for her technical expertise and for creating and collaborating with me on this new logo. And thank you all for supporting me. Please consider hitting the like button and the subscribe button to help my channel grow. So this project is very close to my heart. These little tables were handed down to me after my grandmother passed, and I've had them stored in the garage for several years. Not sure what to do with them. I remember them being in my grandma's house, and I'm told that they were actually built by my great-grandmother. So I'm excited to be able to add some new life to these pieces. So while I was searching for a tool to take off this veneer, my husband came along and manhandled it like he does and just ripped the top right off. So I was able to find a screwdriver and take the rest off of the top here. Then I went ahead and scraped as much of that old glue as I could. I had a few helpers trying to steal the show. So in the process of removing the old hardware, I found this old address stamp in the bottom of the drawer. Took me right back to my childhood. I had to get the piece cleaned up and pounded down some nails that had been sticking out. There were plenty of nicks and gouges that needed to be filled, including this crack where two pieces had been glued together on the tabletop. So for this, I used Gorilla wood filler, and after sanding, it became a nice smooth edge. Then I used the same filler for the drawers where the hardware had been. Next, I mixed some Bondo for some of the other spots around the table. Then I had to give it another good wipe down. So there were these large gaps between the wood pieces, and I decided to fill those in with some caulking, run my finger down through it to make it contour to both sides so that I could paint and have it look smooth later. So I refreshed the drawers by sanding them, and I had these two products that I wanted to try, one for one drawer and the other for the second drawer. The Odie's oil went on kind of thick and it was a little bit hard to spread, but it worked. Next, I added primer to the entire piece. Then I went over it with a fine grit sandpaper. For the second drawer, I used this amazing smelling lemon refresher type product, and it went on a lot smoother and it smelled amazing. It was my favorite. So now it's finally time for the fun part, making this pretty. So for this piece, I'm using acrylic latex paint, and what I'm doing is overlapping the two colors. Then I'm taking a dry brush to fade them together to create this ombre style, and I love how it turned out. And then I decided to continue the ombre style on the drawer front as well. This table is a bit wobbly, so I drilled some holes and added some adjustable feet. The area on the sides of these tables was just calling out to me for something special. So I brushed down some Mod Podge, then I applied this clip art that I had printed online. And while the glue on the bottom was still wet, I did another layer of Mod Podge over the top to seal it all in. So while that was left to dry, I began preparing the glass for the mosaic border that I wanted to put around the sunflowers. So I laid out all of my glass pieces just the way I wanted them, and then I started gluing them all down. And while that was drying, I drilled the hole and added the hardware to this first drawer. Next, I took some water, added it to my white grout, mixed it up well, and then I applied it to the mosaic border. I then pushed it into the cracks with my fingers and made sure it was nice and even everywhere. And after letting it dry for a few minutes, I came in with a wet sponge to pick up the residue. After that, I went in with some beads to make the border look a little more complete. Next, I start preparing the daisies for the other table. I got these glass plates at the dollar store, and I'm just nipping the edges, which creates these lovely flower petals. So for this next part, I need to make sure the surface is nice and level, because I'm going to be mixing equal parts epoxy resin, combining and mixing thoroughly. Then I'm just applying my resin over the entire surface to make sure everything is covered. Then I lightly graze the surface with my butane torch just to take care of any air bubbles. And then this whole process is repeated on the other side. So for the insides of the drawers, I'm using this self-stick felt paper. So there'll be some measuring and cutting and pasting involved. And I'm finally ready for the top coat of polyurethane over the entire project. Now I'm working on the layout for the daisies for the other table, and I'm just filing down some of these super sharp edges. So I've primed the other table, and now I'm ready for paint. This is my first time using Dixie Belle, and I fell in love with it. This is a chalk paint, and the yellow one is called Daisy, so I had to choose that one. So here I've just loosely laid these glass pieces out in the form of daisies, and I'm doing another round of epoxy resin, and I will make sure that the entire surface is covered. And once again, going in with the torch to take care of any air bubbles. So I'm doing another layer of epoxy. I've added this gold glimmer powder to it. The bottom layer of epoxy has dried overnight. I've laid out these translucent glass tiles in the form of a different looking daisy. I'm just going to do another layer of the epoxy. So the idea is that these second daisies are kind of floating between the first layer and the second layer of epoxy resin. So the epoxy was left to dry overnight, and of course I repeated that same process on the opposite side of the table. But on the bottom shelf here, I'm just putting down this self-stick furniture transfer, a little field of daisies here. Then I'm going in with Mod Podge over the top to seal it down. And for my top coat, for the chalk paint, I'm using this finishing wax. I will go ahead and apply it over the entire surface, and then I will take a cloth and wipe off the excess. And the only thing left to do here is to add the new knob. So let's remember where we started and where we are now. What a transformation! So the inspiration for this table was actually my daughter. Her favorite flower is daisies. Let's take a closer look, shall we? It's hard to tell if the camera's picking it up, but I can definitely see that gold glimmer on that top layer, and it really gives it a nice look. And this table was inspired by my bonus daughter. Her favorite flower is the sunflower, and I just love how this turned out as well. What I really love about these pieces is the fusion between the glass art and the furniture refinishing process, and the fact that I have made my mark on these now, and I feel like I've bridged the gap between my great-grandma and my grandma all the way down to my girls. And who knows, maybe someday my great-grandchildren will be cherishing these in their home. Thank you so much for watching. Until next time.